Hello, this is your friend David Mills in Huntington, West Virginia, and I want to tell you a story of what happened to me this past week. You won't believe it. I don't believe it. This time last week, I had a life expectancy of 82 years. I'm 66, and based upon all the numbers I typed into the computer, I had a life expectancy of 82. Today, at 66, I have a life expectancy of 67. I just got my first visit from hospice about 4 hours ago, and they were absolutely wonderful. But I want to tell you what happened and how this came about. Up until the last week of October, I felt perfectly fine, good as I ever felt in my life. On trick-or-treat night, the last night in October, I helped my family pass out trick-or-treat candy to the kids. Now, that night was particularly cold and rainy, and for a few days thereafter, my back felt kind of achy, from arthritis, and just didn't feel right. But it'll go away. But it didn't. So I went to the doctor, and they said that I did have arthritis, just like my mom. My mom used to say that she could tell when it was going to rain in Lexington, Kentucky, by the way her back felt. And I'm embarrassed to tell you that I used to ridicule her for saying that. Your back doesn't know if it's raining. Well, if I could bring my mother back for 5 minutes, the first thing I would do would be tell her about her wonderful granddaughter that she never got to meet. And the second thing I would do would be to profusely apologize to her for doubting that the weather affected her back. So I went a couple of weeks with a terrible backache, went to the doctor, and they thought I had like tense muscles in my back, spasms, so they prescribed some muscle relaxants, and they made me sleepy. I thought, oh my God, I can't keep my head open, or my eyes open. But it didn't help my back. So they changed the relaxants. I went to a different doctor, and altogether, I had 5 different muscle relaxants, none of which worked. Well, to make matters worse, a couple of weeks later, this was about 3 weeks ago, I was taking out the garbage and fell down, just essentially tripped over my own feet. Hurt my right leg pretty bad. And I suffered a lot of pain with that. But I thought, well, none of the bones were broken because I could stand on it. I couldn't stand on it if it were actually broken. So I'll just tough it out. Well, it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then finally last weekend, in the middle of the night, I was just in unbearable pain from my back to my leg to my whole nervous system was just fried. And so I called an ambulance because I was in no shape to drive to the hospital. Plus, this was in the middle of the night. So the ambulance took me to the hospital, and the doctor saw me, and the first thing he ordered was a PET scan with contrast. Well, that's odd. A PET scan is usually used to find cancer, especially with the contrast. They did x-rays, they did the PET scan, they did some ultrasounds and some other tests I don't even know how to pronounce. And the doctor came back about an hour later and said I had metastatic prostate cancer that had already spread to my spinal cord and to my spinal canal, whatever that is. And so he put me in the hospital. Quite a surprise. Yes, it's a surprise. And so the next day they ran an MRI, which is a more detailed scan. and found that the prostate cancer had already spread into the bones of the pelvis. So I had metastatic prostate cancer of the spine, spinal canal, and the bones of the pelvis. And I might add that those are the only areas where they really looked. They didn't look at the head or some of the internal organs. So it's very likely elsewhere as well. But that was enough to conclude I was terminally ill. And, the question then is, what did I want to do about it? Do you want to they told me about some spinal operation that could take 10 or 12 hours and then you do radiation and all this jazz. And there's no hope you would get better. You might even get worse. And the bone cancer, you can't remove your pelvis, get a pelvis transplant. I wish to God you could. So, 8 years ago, I made out my living will that said that if I ever faced a serious terminal metastatic illness, that I wanted just palliative care, meaning that they just try to keep you comfortable and feeling functional for as long as you have to live, even though the palliative care might or probably will shorten your life. So I was in the hospital 3 days, and after I was discharged, hospice called, and they came down. They sent their medical team down to this house today. They're absolutely wonderful people. My father died in hospice care in 2018, and I don't think he ever knew he was there in the Imogene Dolan Jones facility. And I don't think he had any pain, whatever. They used what's called palliative sedation, that they essentially knock you out. You're still alive. They don't kill you. Active euthanasia is not legal in this state, but they put you in an unconscious state so you don't feel any pain, and then they, take care of you. But so I was, my main concern when the doctor told me that I had the metastatic cancer was, and I was handling it very well. You might as well have a good attitude about it. Having a shitty attitude isn't going to help you, isn't going to help anybody else. But my first thought was, oh my God, my daughter is going to fall apart. And she did. But I think she's got it together now. She knows that her father isn't going any place just yet. So, I don't have a prognosis of days or weeks, a little bit longer than that. But being in hospice care does not mean that you're going to die in a few days. And this is a mistake I'd like to talk with you about a little bit. People wait too long to contact hospice. They wait till their loved one is 3 or 4 days from death, then they contact hospice, then they put the person in the hospice facility. You can contact hospice at any time. Hospice will take you if you're expected to live even 6 more months. And a lot of people live longer than that and are re-enrolled into another 6-month period. So a little tip I'd like to give you from myself and from my father as well is, don't wait till your loved one is only days away from death to contact hospice. They can help you for months and months and months ahead of time. And a lot of you have complimented that I seem to have a very positive attitude about things. And I like to think that I do. A quote I love is from the British philosopher Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell said that a person should have such a broad view of human history and such a broad view of cosmic history that person views his own death as just a tiny blip on the screen. And I like to think I've always maintained such a broad attitude. Others have asked me, has this shocking realization, and by the way, I am upset about this. I'm just not as upset as you might think, or as you might envision you would be. But people have asked also, has this caused you to reevaluate your views on religion? And as a lot of you know, I'm an atheist. In fact, I wrote a very widely distributed book, Atheist Universe, about 20 years ago. A friend of mine named Mike Collins, who is the most ethically impeccable Christian gentleman I ever met. Now, he would deny that, but he is. And he drove me home from the hospital, and he said, did this cause me to reevaluate my religious views? And I said, well, an open-minded person should constantly be reevaluating his views on every subject. Political, religious, scientific, you should always be reevaluating your beliefs, challenging them. Say, are they still true? Maybe they were true, now they're not. And but to answer the question directly, my views haven't changed. The doctor didn't tell me that, and I suddenly started praying. No. It never even occurred to me to go that direction. In fact, the only reason I'm even mentioning it is because my friend Mike brought up the subject, and other people had too, so I thought I'd maybe make a comment or two about that. Let me check I made a few notes here to see if there was anything I wanted to say else. People wonder, well, how would you cope with this? Because I am going to die soon. I know that. I don't think an angel is going to appear and cure me. Now, I'd love to be wrong here. I will I will come back on here and confess the miracle if it occurs, but I do not expect that. But I want to point out how a secular scientific view of the world can actually help you accept tragic news like this. You know, people are told, like I was, that you're terminally ill, you're going to die pretty soon. And remember, this, I had no suspicion at all. This was like totally out of the blue. For me, the question of, well, why did this happen? Why did this happen? The answer is somewhere within the human cell. This is a scientific question. Somewhere the DNA, the RNA, the nucleotides, or the cell chemistry, somewhere, somehow got fucked up and is reproducing uncontrollably. Now, these concepts are very poorly understood, certainly by me, but I think even the world's greatest scientists would admit that how these things metastasize and why one person gets cancer and another one doesn't, we don't know. But the answer still resides as to why this happened within the cell. That's the answer. The religious-minded person expands this concept of why to include practically everything, instead of saying, well, the cell got messed up somehow, and now these cells are multiplying. The religious person will say, why is God calling me home? What did I do something wrong? Did I sin? Does God want me in the heavenly choir to sing with Elvis? I'm dubious about that. But my point is that you're presented with an endless array of possibilities. The religious person is as to why something happened, and you, of course, have no definitive answers. The science view is that it's simply a question of cell division gone awry. And to me, that's easier to accept than some nebulous thought about you're being punished or taken home early or whatever. Looking through my notes real quick, I think I've covered a lot of what I wanted to say. So I think I'll just close with maybe a little poem that I learned many years ago. It kind of applies here. It goes like this. Life is like a journey taken on a train with a pair of travelers at each window pane. I may sit beside you, good folks, the whole journey through, or I may sit elsewhere, never knowing you. But if fate would have us all to sit there side by side, let's be pleasant travelers, 'cause it's such a short old ride.